Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is now calling on Harvard University to cut ties with Larry Summers, the school's former president and one of its most prominent faculty members, due to his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. New details on Summers' relationship with Epstein came to light last week when a House committee released emails showing years of personal correspondence between both men. The emails also allegedly reveal sexist comments made by Summers, who sought Epstein's romantic advice. Warren, who also has ties to Harvard as a former law professor, says Summers can't be trusted with students given these ties. Summers has previously stated he regrets his past association with Epstein.